comes our weekly ReZero cut content from Mr. AniNews. This is the Garfiel versus Kurgan episode. Let's get it.
As amazing as it was to watch such an incredible scene wrap up the Garfiel versus Kurgan fight,
the impact frames.
this was probably the battle that got the least amount of attention. Reason being that there was so much more to it than just Garfiel overcoming a seemingly insurmountable obstacle.
Okay.
The entire season we've been seeing Garfiel's weaknesses exposed one by one, and it was only here that Garfiel was finally able to accept them.
Yeah, it was the whole Elsa running at Garfiel, taunting him, saying, "Can you kill, these monsters that were once humans and stuff like that, right?" And then he kind of like gets over that, and then he like went Super Saiyan.
So this fight was actually more so about Garfiel overcoming himself. Where before he was incapable of carrying all the people he wanted to support, by the end he realized he just needed to become stronger. The world was...
Yeah, it's just that simple. But he did it. See? No bullshit. No excuses. You figure out a problem, and you realize that you're not enough, get better. You know who can't do this? Felix. I'm just saying. The author, in the way that he writes Felix, maybe it's different in the source material. In the anime, bro, Felix never does this shit. Garfield has his own problems, own shortcomings, surpasses them, delivers results. Felix just crashes out, complains and whines, no changes, and it is so unfortunate.
Was much larger than he initially thought, and his fight with Kurgan was a pivotal moment allowing him to realize that. So, if you want to see what really went down between the Gorgeous Tiger and the War God, this is everything
Yo, I just realized Kurgan probably, not just Kurgan, but the multi-armed species, they have probably such an easy time, like, wiping their ass. Like, look at the hand placement. It's right there. Yo, they probably get freaky. Because, like, they got 4 arms. They got multiple limbs. You're not, like, limited by just 2 hands. You know what I mean?
The anime left out from it. It's an extremely impactful fight that develops Garfield's character tremendously. There was also way more tactics involved, making the fight a whole lot more intense. Let's get started.
No ad?
To start things here
no
outside
ad.
The control tower, in addition to Wilhelm sharing the personal information about his wife, he would also reveal how these 2 corpse warriors were likely nowhere as close to how strong as they used to be.
That's right, they're nerfed.
Such a revelation came as quite the shock for Garfield, since after fighting both in that one-sided beatdown earlier, he couldn't imagine what would have happened if they were stronger.
It was already a 2v1, but yeah, I don't know if we have a ballpark number figure. Are they half as weak? Are they a third of their original power or stuff like that? But it's kind of crazy to think that these are nerf beings that gave us so much trouble.
It was news that placed doubt into his own capabilities too, since as heroes from the legends he always looked up to, Garfield truly wondered if he could beat them.
And he did.
His true goal was obviously Capella and the tower, but standing in his way now was an obstacle that needed to be cleared first. Now, while Wilhelm would engage with a direct charge that spoke true to who he was, Garfield would jump from building to building, choosing to engage from an angle a bit more unconventional.
Parkour!
Reason being that he knew attacking head-on would never work. That's just how legendary his opponent was. His attack was still blocked just as easily, but Garfield would continue his assault, raining blows from every possible angle he could. They were moves which actually seemed to be making an impact, since of the ones that connected, they were doing damage. Maybe not anything particularly substantial, but certainly enough to leave a mark and make him bleed.
Damage being done, okay? Build it up.
This would be the moment where Garfield knew he should focus only on the fight, but as Ram had pointed out to him once before, too often would he let his mind wander away from it. Part of the reason why Garfield couldn't end the fight sooner was because he constantly changed focus to some other issue on his mind.
ADHD.
Whether it be his siblings, his mom, the Archbishop, or Subaru, distraction after distraction would prevent him from truly focusing on the opponent in front of him.
Zoomer Garfield, TikTok brain rotted, can't focus, can't lock in.
They were the root cause of every advantage Kurgan gained here. One such advantage was a brutal pummeling, leaving Garfield in fear, since Kurgan's relentless onslaught combined with his tower-like stature reminded Garfield why he'd earned the title of God of War in the first place.
That's a crazy title.
Garfield knew this wasn't the time to act all scared, but no matter how hard he tried to hype himself up, deep down he knew the courage he was building was nothing but fake. Even so, It was with this fake courage that Garfiel would unleash an attack containing all the strength he could muster. By focusing the power of the earth into one.
I love this scene, bro. Every time Garfield did that little stanky leg, little shake around and it stomps. I think this is the divine protection blessing of the earth, right? But man, this shit was so cool.
The earth into one single point. Garfield would launch himself with enough force to level an entire building, only to be stopped dead in his tracks by Kurgan's two cleavers.
That's just a dick shot right there.
This went to show just how outmatched Garfield was, since the attack wasn't nullified, parried, or deflected. It was simply endured in a way that showed Garfield he wasn't strong enough. In
Just
this
tanks
contest
it.
of what was essentially raw power, Garfield had failed to keep up with the legendary warrior he was fighting against. Where he landed after would leave him in the position to get squashed by Capella's decoy, swallowing him whole in what was essentially an absurdly large mass of blood.
Shit, again, it's just Capella's ball sack. Like, what is that?
It was an amorphous blob of it. Garfield couldn't tell whether it was alive or not. Such a notion was something he would have considered crazy before, but
And it was a
now
fake
that
out.
the city was crawling with lifeless corpse soldiers and demi-beasts, the idea that there was also a slithering mass of blood didn't seem all that impossible anymore. So, it was this slime that left Garfield in a more precarious situation than what we saw in the anime, since with all 5 of his senses being overwhelmed by it, he was quickly running out of air with no way to escape. He had tried to fall back on the 6th sense that Subaru had taught him, but once again his idle thoughts prevented him from doing anything.
6th sense that Subaru taught him? I didn't know about this. What is that? Intuition? Huh?
Even as he gasped for air and filled his lungs with blood, his idle thoughts would continue to prevail regardless. They seemed like they were gonna continue all the way to the bitter end here. Luckily, his self-preservation instinct did kick in, so that was what enabled him to escape the pathetic death awaiting him. It was the moment his transformed claws breached the surface of this monstrosity that Garfield instinctively knew he had killed it. Whatever life Capella imbued into it was now gone. Kurgan wouldn't
Alright,
give him
testicle
a single
overcome.
breath to recover though, since the moment Garfield cleared himself of the blood's deadly embrace, a barrage of fists sent him flying far away from where the fight initially began. It was a relentless attack that shattered his bones and ruptured his organs. Compared to the agony of drowning in
How the fuck are we gonna have shattered bones and ruptured organs at this stage of the fight when it just began and he still wins?
blood though, this was nothing more than a pinch to him. It was then that a group of demi-beasts would surround Garfield like how we saw in the anime, but where here we saw him hesitate to kill them, in the novel Garfield wasted no time destroying them.
Okay, why'd the anime do that? They were trying to like make a big point about, oh, they're like, you know, ex-humans. Can you kill it, Garfield? And Elsa was taunting and Garfield couldn't. And, you know, later on, he could. Anyways, in the source material, that didn't matter.
He knew on an instinctual level they needed to be taken care of. Kurgan's intervention would result in the slaughter of these demi-beasts as well, but not for the reason that you might think. You see, his desire for
He probably thinks that it's ruining the sanctity of a duel. These minions, I do not need their help. This is a 1v1. Do not disgrace my duel with Garfield.
1v1 was simply a reflex from the warrior code ingrained into him.
Yeah,
Though
based.
his mind was gone, Kurgan's body wanted to preserve this match between War God and War Tiger. It was a desire that led him to take on both Garfield and the demi-beasts together. With one hand, he would continue punching Garfield, while with the other 7, he would take care of the demi-beasts jumping at him now. Both
That's
were
crazy.
handled with the same finesse and confidence we've come to expect from Kurgan. So, more bones would shatter and flesh be opened, but Garfield's recovery magic would enable him to fix himself up. The only thing Garfield really needed to focus on then was creating openings so he could do it. It's kinda like when waiting for the right time to heal during a boss fight in a Souls game. Very few instances were given for Garfield to do so, but with some clever tactics and a little ingenuity, he was able to catch Kurgan off guard by transforming back into his human form. With his tiger form getting absolutely pummeled, Garfield was able to switch back then catch Kurgan in a grapple.
Okay,
He
smart,
would
smart.
then toss Kurgan straight through the wall of the control tower, bringing the fight to a
Love how he picked up a scene from season 2 of Patrash getting done dirty to visually, you know, reference what's happening in the fight right now with Kurgan.
more intimate location. It's here punches would be met with punches and kicks met with kicks. all resulting in this intense back and forth of offense and defense.
That's right, close quarters,
Now,
just all out.
with this being the location Garfiel had set out to go in the first place, a simple observation of the inside would reveal it was all just bait. Capella had left everything behind as a decoy and was now nowhere to be found by anyone. This was an incredibly bad turn of events for the home team since Capella's absence meant that she could turn up anywhere.
But they planned this, didn't they? Like Anastasia, Al, Felix, they were all planning for us to get sabotaged, right? Maybe they didn't understand who would show up, like Capella specifically, but they were ready.
That being the case, Garfiel knew he needed to inform those back at base immediately. It was right as he was about to reach out and grab the conversation mirror, though, that Kurgan would re-engage and continue his beatdown. It's here the novel gives a pretty interesting breakdown of how an encounter like this goes, so if you were wondering how Garfiel dealt with each of his arms, this would be a standard case going through a full route with them. As I'm sure you could tell, there was only so much he could do when facing 8 consecutive attacks like this. Now, what hurt Garfiel even more than any of this was the blow to his pride that came when he saw Kurgan wasn't even trying. Like, until now he still hadn't used any of his swords, so Garfiel knew he was just being toyed with.
That's right.
So, the fact Kurgan could have ended the fight yet didn't shattered every part of him he once valued as a warrior.
Just toying with us.
It was humiliating treatment that Garfiel would have taken death over. It was then that Garfiel's idle thoughts would remind him why he was even doing all of this, revitalizing his will to fight in a way that even Kurgan took notice of.
Gorgeous tiger, don't give up!
Still looking grim, the familiar voices in Garfiel's head encouraged him to keep pushing forward regardless. It rebuilt his confidence in a way that clearly resonated with Kurgan.
Garfiel with his hair down like this looks way better than slicked up.
A change in demeanor that would lead him to finally draw his 2 devil cleavers. This is where the fight really begins, but not before a bit of backstory about Kurgan himself.
Okay,
we
lore?
already know his people were discriminated and Kurgan saved them, but what was left out was...
That's right, the lore of the 8-armed people is that they have no capacity for magic, and they are discriminated against. But Kurgan himself was so OP that even without being able to use magic or some shit, he was able to just revitalize his clan and put some fucking respect on their people.
How exactly that happened. You see, with the many-armed tribe always being treated as inferior, they were never able to settle down into a homeland they could call their own.
They're just jealous. They're jealous because they don't got as many arms as, Kurgan.
The one they had was lost in a battle a long time ago, so now they were constantly on the move searching for one.
Okay.
Eventually they would settle down in a land the local lord didn't approve of, so in an attempt to clear his territory of the inferior race currently blemishing it, the lord would send his soldiers to evict them.
That's crazy. This is literally just refugee immigrants trying to settle and then getting deported.
It was Kurgan who had killed every last one of them, then...
Hey, this is Wilhelm, right? Young Wilhelm versus Kurgan in the past.
After bringing the fight all the way to the local lord's manor, Kurgan would concede and offer his services as the lord's new captain.
Okay.
It was from there he would earn his valor on countless battlefields, eventually building himself up to the legend he was today.
Basically, Kurgan's people were all about to get deported. But Kurgan was such a giga-chad that he earned the respect of the local lord. And now he has earned like a position in his army, and that's how we kind of go up.
So, it was this icon of martial supremacy that Garfiel was up against, bringing us to the showdown in the sewers we saw here. Their joint tumble in the water would lead to an even more fierce exchange underneath it, where, though submerged and completely unable to see, the two would somehow find each other and continue to fight. It was as if their instincts were leading them right to each other. For Garfiel, who still needed air though, this exchange was especially brutal.
He's also nerfed when he doesn't have his feet on the ground. You know what he's like on a boat, right? With water stuff like this.
He couldn't breathe and his brain was losing oxygen, so where Kurgan could continue on like normal, Garfiel was struggling just to survive. Once again, Kurgan could have done nothing and won the fight here, yet whether out of nobility or a simple sense to keep on fighting, he would break the wall of the waterway and allow Garfiel to keep...
See? Honestly, Kurgan's downfall is his pride. Because, like, if he truly wanted to win, he could have just won. But it's not really about winning, I guess, right? It's like the warrior's pride, knight chivalry. You see that shit in Fate all the time, and there's like a lesson of these, knights trying to do their little honorable duel, and then you have base Giga Chad, Kiritsugu coming in saying, fuck your duel, I'm just gonna win, right? So at the end of the day, maybe it was never really about winning. Kurgan just wanted to relive the glories of his warrior life, and hey, if it means that he loses later on because he was quote-unquote toying with his food, which is honestly just, what's it called? Honoring the sanctity of a 1v1 duel, right? So it's not really about winning. It doesn't matter if you win by having an unfair advantage, I guess. All right.
Keep on living. This is where the anime would divert yet again, since where here demi-beasts would arrive to help Garfiel overcome this inner conflict of his, instead there was only Kurgan. He would fall into the shelter shortly after Garfiel, then
I guess the anime just wanted to really have a specific moment of Garfield overcoming Elsa's delusions within, right? That's what the whole demi-human, beast things were all about. But in the source material, doesn't really matter.
Immediately continue his assault without the slightest bit of hesitation. There was no emotional reunion with Raph or Fred, just more fighting and even more struggling.
No fans? Then I think the anime did a pretty good job. I think the anime having, our fans, right? The audience behind him cheering him on, witnessing the fight, that really hypes it up. I'm glad the anime did that then.
The initial attacks Kurgan engaged with had caught Garfiel off guard, so he was completely susceptible to an 8-punch combo, leaving him broken. The next 8 were blocked, evaded, dodged, parried, ducked, deflected, and smashed in that order, reinforcing the fact that he was at an overwhelming disadvantage. I mean,
I just can't imagine 8 fucking punches in a row every time. It is so mind-blowingly unfair. 8 limbs, bro. 8 punches. And constant waves happening.
For every one of his attacks, Garfiel had to put up with 8. It was this disparity that actually went to encourage Garfiel, since now Kurgan was holding 3 of his cleavers.
Oh, trying a little bit harder.
His opponent finally started to take him seriously resonated deeply considering all that happened prior. There was a certain satisfaction that came from knowing a legendary figure such as this saw him as a warrior too.
Yes, he's respecting me more and more.
After that encounter with Reinhardt, the incident with his mother and his incompetence with Mimi, the powerlessness he felt from then was slowly dissipating. The past 2 days had
Kurgan literally gave him therapy. This is all reclaiming his lost confidence and validating through Kurgan's actions that oh, wow, okay, you're keeping up. Here's a 3rd sword. And Garfield's like, yes, I knew I was him.
Exposed all his weaknesses at once, but here Kurgan was helping him find his strength again.
Okay.
He had reignited the spirit Garfield had lost, and it was all from the simple act of drawing his weapons.
What a nice guy.
So, though Kurgan couldn't realize what exactly he had done for Garfield, his impact on him was immeasurable.
Literally. It's actually so funny. Just beating the shit out of us. Like, all right, now can you handle 3? Garfield's like, oh, Daddy Kurgan, please, a 4th sword, and I'm just gonna be completely enlightened.
Words couldn't begin to describe how much of an honor all this was for Garfield.
Blaze.
Now, that's one of the aspects I think is hard to tell in the anime, since this whole fight was all about developing Garfield.
Yeah, the anime fight was more of just non-stop action hype. Us thinking, how the hell is he gonna overcome this? There's definitely a more of a emotional tone that is absent in the anime. I guess the development comes from, again, those anime exclusive demi-human overcoming scenes, right, with Elsa in the background. That's, I guess, what the anime decided to do. That, I guess we just can't really have all these monologues and have well, I mean, would it have taken that much for Garfield to have 1 or 2 couple lines whenever Kurgan, tried harder, of Garfield's like, oh, is he honoring me? It's like, oh wow, this is actually feeling good or something. But all right.
Where initially he started out as this unwavering child Kurgan refused to acknowledge as a warrior, now he was an equal befitting proper attention. Before, Kurgan had just kept him at a distance, seemingly out of pity, but now both were brimming with the insatiable desire to fight each other. It was a shared feeling that led to an intense stare-down. A stare-down which indicated the fight was going to be resolved with one single decisive clash.
They're already having simulations in their head, some samurai shit. They're not moving, but they're already Fucking imagining the battle in their heads.
First, the embers of resistance would be ignited by Garfiel's presence, though, leading the spectators to cheer him on just like how we saw in the end.
Let's go, spectators!
If Subaru's speech was what lit the match, Garfiel's resolve here was the fuel keeping that fire going. The people's encouragement served as fuel to him as well, and that would have him entering the duel more confident than ever.
Oh, sorry. Audio issue. Second. 3, 2, 1, and we should be good.
Have him entering the duel more confident than ever. Now, the part of this duel that makes it so interesting in the novel is that it was essentially Garfiel's one attack against Kurgan's 8. Their past exchanges showed us that that was always the case here, so if Garfield wanted to come out on top, he'd first need to overcome the combo of 8 he'd been dealing with before.
Take out the arms.
So, the first attack came as a horizontal slash to the torso, one he'd avoid by jumping then stepping on the blade to stop it. The second was an arc from Kurgan's left side, a powerful attack which Garfield would shield with both his arms. It was a blow far too powerful for him to handle though, since
Bones
not
shattered.
only did the impact crumple his entire arm, it also broke both his shoulder and his wrist.
By the way, at this point, remember, his organs are ruptured and multiple bones have been shattered early on in the episode. But okay, he just keeps going.
6 attacks were still to follow after this, so next, Garfield had to deal with a simultaneous sequence of barehanded attacks. They were 2 fists, one aimed at his torso and the other his neck. Both would have been fatal had they gone undefended, but Garfield's abs would absorb most of the blow at the torso, while
Just
the
tanked
punch
it?
aimed for his neck would get blocked by his already broken arm.
Ow! We're just eating fists. The abs, he just tanked it. And his broken arm takes another. Oh.
In the end, the ligament was
I guess you wouldn't really feel anything at this point because you're just going numb and the adrenaline's rushing, but it's just like, tanking a hit with a broken arm already?
nothing more than a shattered mess barely recognizable from how it was supposed to be.
Ugh.
The rest of the impact was stopped with Garfield's forehead,
That's fucking crazy when he bit the blade.
bringing him halfway to where he wanted to be.
Forehead? He taking this shit with his forehead? I mean, okay. Alright. I hear that's an actual technique in boxing too, right? The forehead, right? It's kind of crazy to think that you would want to lean in with your head, right? But the forehead, it's actually pretty hard, right? If you kind of like position it correctly, it can be used to cut the momentum, like the speed of a punch before it even like has that full range, if you know what I'm saying.
The 5th and 6th attack would come barehanded as well, making it clear the third
We literally learned about that in Viral Hit. There's an anime called Viral Hit. The Korean webtoon anime about a kid, who goes viral by just street fighting. And one of the techniques was like literally just like tanking with your forehead by closing the distance.
cleaver was being saved for the end. As for how Garfield avoided this, well, his arm was too messed up to defend, so instead Garfield relied on his magic. He would use the blessing of Earth
Stanky
to create
leg.
a small opening for
Yeah.
himself, allowing him to just barely maneuver between the gap existing between the fists coming towards him. It was an incredible display of decisiveness that went to shock even him. It was then that Kurgan would skip the 7th attack and go straight to the 8th, leading to a slash that could neither be evaded nor intercepted. This was the ultimate move Kurgan could muster, and the only choice Garfield had now was pure defense. It was an instantaneous decision that detached himself from the world around him. Color
The
faded
zone.
and sound dissipated, leaving nothing in his periphery other than Kurgan and the slash coming towards him. For Garfield, this was a state of perfect focus.
The
The only
zone.
thing left in his consciousness was the target in front of him.
It's pure instincts.
So, with everything now in slow motion, all Garfield could do was wait. It was the perfect opportunity for his idle thoughts to return again, but now they were memories of all the people he cared for.
Careful now. This could be a death flag. I'm glad it didn't happen in the anime because like going through your life and remembering your best friends and lovers is not a really good sign during a moment like this.
A lot of them were people he didn't know of before Sanctuary, so Garfield couldn't help but wonder if they were what was making him weak. I mean, it
Nah, they should be the source of his strength, not the weakness.
was the events in Sanctuary that started exposing his weaknesses to him. His encounter with Reinhardt.
It's not exposing his weaknesses, right? It's more of he was a frog in a well that didn't realize how big the outside world is. It's definitely a shocking realization when you realize so many other people are strong. But if you truly were that strong from the beginning, you wouldn't be exposed to your weakness. It's just that you were always kind of that weak. It's just now you're faced with reality and you're figuring it out.
Art then showed him just how big the world was, so for a moment, Garfield truly thought holding on to more was making him weaker. It was when he really thought about it, though, that Garfield realized that was impossible. Like, if all those precious to him was in fact what was making him weaker, then what even was the point of living? It was then Garfield finally understood he just needed
Power
to
of friendship.
stronger, and the moment he did, all his worries just vanished.
That's just the stupidest thing, though. Say it again. Say it again, AniNews.
What even was the point of
Yeah.
living? It was then Garfield finally understood he just needed to become stronger.
Yeah.
And the moment he did, all his worries just vanished.
What's the problem, bro? Oh man, I'm getting my ass beat in this fight. Hold up. Did I think about just being stronger? Wait a minute. That's it. I'll just win. I'll just be stronger. Done. Easy. And maybe it's possible for Garfield because he's so stupid and simple. Rather than being so smart for your own good, rather than being so aware of your limitations and dooming and thinking that this is impossible, someone as ignorant and as simple and as dumb as Garfield doesn't have to worry about that. They don't think about that shit. They can't think about that shit. They just think, I'll just win. I think I can do it. Ignorance is bliss, man.
If he wasn't strong enough to hold all the new things he now held dear, then all he needed to do was get stronger. It was a simple solution to everything that was haunting him.
It's honestly very funny, kind of ridiculous, but very fitting for a character like Garfield, and I don't even think that's really plot armor. I don't care. I think it's, again, ridiculous, but kind of makes sense.
Finally, Kurgan Slash would connect with the good arm Garfield had left, shattering it to the same state that the right was in.
Ugh.
The thing is, with the attack being unleashed from the same arm Garfield had injured earlier, it was the one spot most prone to being countered.
There we go.
This was a weakness Kurgan would have noticed had he been alive, since the pain from such an injury would have made him unleash the final attack from a better arm.
Oh, he's too numb to realize.
He didn't, though, that Garfield blocking the attack head-on would rupture Kurgan's arm in the process. The deep gash Garfield left earlier was now the pivotal instrument in turning the tables here.
That's right, and then he goes tiger mode and like chomps.
Garfield didn't have any more claws to attack with, but what he did have was
Teeth
his
time.
fangs. So after enduring all 8 arms and creating an opening for himself, Garfield would lunge face first and rip out half of Kurgan's neck. The whole exchange might have gone unnoticed had you watched the scene only once, but it was exactly what happened in the anime too.
Yeah, we saw that. It just happened really fast. And another opponent failed by attacking to the neck. That's exactly what we did to Elsa as well, right?
Mind you, the attack Garfield landed was much smaller in the anime.
It literally exists right there. Right over here. Kind of hard to see if you, because everything kind of blends in with the background, this dark blue hue, but boom, there's that chunk right there.
So this would be the end for Kurgan, and with a single word of commendation, the hero would crumble mercilessly back into the ash.
Well done!
It was an unfulfilling end to the battle which brought fulfillment to Garfield. But yeah, that was the full extent of their fight together. I really liked how it served to develop Garfield, so I'd love to see what you all thought as well.
Okay.
Did you think the anime did justice to Garfield's character, or do you think they could have done more to convey his triumph over his weakness?
I don't give a fuck. All I care is that Vincent Chansard pulled up and gave us the craziest Sakuga moments with crazy, insane camera work and, you know, angles and just impact frames and just smearing and all that shit, and I'm just cooming at this fight. Straight up. It's nice to understand more of like characterization and a deeper meaning of the fight, but when I watched this, my simple monkey brain went, oh my god, this shit's fucking peak no matter what, so I didn't really care. For source material readers, maybe they were disappointed about the lack of character introspection from Garfield's end during this fight, but as an anime only, ignorance is bliss, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Nice to hear more about like the, again, other things going on in their brains as they were fighting. This cut content obviously is less of lore, but more of just fight choreography and all the different things, you know, techniques and, you know, very descriptive way of fighting. I enjoyed the Kurgan stuff. Definitely learned something new with Kurgan lore of, you know, we already knew that he was like Walachia's strongest back in the day. A general, also a, you know, multi-armed people are discriminated against, and Kurgan was the one to kind of like champion his species into the eyes of the masses. And the whole idea of them like refugees immigrating to one place, almost getting deported, but Kurgan is such a giga chat that he gets a job. Pretty funny. Anyways, thank you, Mr. AniNews. Please check out AniNews' content. Here's a link to the video, and I'll see you guys next time for more ReZero Cut content from AniNews. Again, thank you, and check out his channel. Give it a like. Bye-bye.